Hello board gamers and welcome back to Not Board Gaming. I'm your host, I'm Mark. Now in today's preview episode we're going to be looking at a game from Mighty Boards which is Posthuman Saga. That's right, Posthuman Saga. It is a game that's been out a couple of years, but coming on the 2nd of February, and the link will be in the description below, is the Kickstarter to the latest expansion, which is going to be called The Journey Home. However, what we're going to do is have a quick look through at the base game and the Resistance and talk a little bit about the upcoming Kickstarter for Posthuman Saga, The Journey Home, coming to Kickstarter on the 2nd of February. Now, what is Posthuman Saga? So if you've been living under a rock for the last couple of years, you may not know too much about Posthuman Saga. Published by Mighty Boards, Posthuman Saga is a post-apocalyptic sandbox game where you, or up to 4 players, so it plays from 1 to 4, it's eminently soloable, or it plays competitively, or there is a team versus mode as well, will explore the kind of post-human world, and you're going to reveal tiles and various scavenger sites where you can kind of forage for goods. You can start building up your resources. You can start arming yourself better as you try and complete various missions on the board. And the aim of the game is to complete these missions and eventually battle the big boss mutants that are on there as well. And that's right, there are mutants in this game, because not only is it a resource management and tile laying game, it's also a combat game as well, using a very clever dice-based system to battle the various mutants. And if you beat them, you get experience points and you can upgrade your character as you go through the game. There is so much going on in Posthuman Saga. Not only is it a sandbox, tile-laying, resource management, combat-based game, but it also tells a story as well. Because as you traverse throughout the map and you start unveiling various parts of the map, you're going to start revealing certain story elements, and that's this bag of tokens right here. And when you pull a particular story element from there, you're going to go to the storybook, and you're going to reveal that particular story and read its contents. And then there will be tests to carry out on there, depending on what resources you've got, if you've got any followers in your particular deck. And you will carry out these tests, and if you pass them, fantastic. That means you're going to get something of real benefit. If you don't pass them, then bad things can happen. And that's a real nice element for this. It starts to create this really rounded experience. In the base game, you get access to 5 characters, and each character is asymmetrical in terms of the kind of various abilities they have. So maybe one is particularly good at range weapons and shootings, maybe another is good at melee weapons, another might be good at a certain type of test, and their decks are all asymmetrical and they carry out this very, very different feeling. So choosing the right character as you embark on your solo adventure is really, really important. The board in Posthuman Saga is set up into 4 quadrants, and each player, if you're playing up to 4 players, will take a quadrant of the board. Now, as a solo player, you're only going to take 1 quadrant of the board, and that may not seem like a lot, but a lot happens on this 1 quadrant. You see, each quadrant is split up into a 5x5 grid, and as you explore this grid, you will start to pull tiles from the centre at various points in the game, and then you have the ability to place those tiles on your grid, and that will create a unique and dynamic sandbox type experience, as maybe one tile that you're playing is a city and the other tile and the next tile is going to be a forest type space, and you'll need to lay them in a certain order to complete your various missions, because you have to complete your missions in a set order of the tiles that are on there. You're also going to place some of these wonderful scavenger tokens. Now, these are the deluxe components that you can get for the game. The base game comes with cardboard components. Obviously, I've got the deluxe components here, and you'll put these on the board, and then as you flip these over, you will get various benefits from them as well. So it creates this wonderful dynamic exploration that means that no 2 games are ever the same. The solo game is going to take place over a maximum of 14 rounds, and each of these rounds you're going to flip a token. That token is either going to tell you that nothing is going to happen, or it's going to unveil a story token. That means that you're going to have to reach into that bag full of story tokens and carry out a particular story element, or it could be a event card that you have to pull depending on the icon. If you pull an event card, that creates unique experiences that happen until the next event card is pulled. And say that's a maximum of 14 rounds, because ultimately in the solo game what you've got to do is complete your 2 level 1 missions and your 1 level 2 missions before the zombies reach your base, and that's indicated by this counter here. And every time you have a broadcast, then that counter progressively moves forward. There are ways to move it back. If you if you complete your missions, you can start moving that back, but you can see you've got a real kind of time element there. And that's part of the unique joy of Posthuman Saga, is the fact that not only have you got this in the solo game, you've got the timer working against you, you've got the zombies progressively going towards your base, you've also got the various missions that you have to collect, you have the upgrade abilities which you can get for each character, and that will change depending on which bad guys you fight and where you're foraging and what's happening on each and every turn. And all the time you've got these dwindling resources, your food, your ammunition, etc., your health, morale, fatigue, everything is conspiring against you in this game, and it makes for a really truly exciting and dynamic challenge. So we mentioned that it's a tile-laying exploration game, it's a resource management game, and it's also a combat game as well, because throughout your adventures and your exploration on the map, you're going to come across a wealth of mutants. Of course, it's a post-apocalyptic game, and there are various mutants in there. And throughout the game, they're going to be split up into either level 1 or level 2 mutants. The level 1s are slightly easier to kill, obviously. The level 2 are more difficult. And as you can see, there's a wealth of cards, and they interact slightly different depending on which mutant you've got. They have the ability to do ranged and melee attacks on you sometimes, so maybe they'll shoot at you, and then you'll get into hand-to-hand combat with them, and you also have that ability to fight them. And they operate on a fairly unique, kind of exciting combat system. And here we can see for this Doomsayer, who's a level 1 mutant, he's got a range ability, which means that you roll a d6 die, and that means that you can lose some of your morale, which is not good if that gets down to 0. You're then going to move on to hand-to-hand combat. If you haven't defeated the enemy in their ranged attack, then you move on to hand-to-hand combat, and this one here rolls 2 green and a red die. If we look here, this one rolls 2 red and a green die. If we go to a level 2 mutant, they roll 1 red, 2 green and a black die. So you can see that they start to get more and more intense as you go through, and it's a really exciting element. You're going to use your challenge deck, which is this deck of various cards here, which you can potentially grow throughout the game, and that's going to dictate kind of your the amount of hits that you can get based on what you choose as your primary card, but there's also a slightly random element in there as well, which creates a nice dynamic. And then you will combat these mutants. You don't necessarily have to beat them, you just have to survive the encounter. If you survive the encounter, you're going to get some experience points. However, if you kill the mutant, then what's going to happen is you're going to get experience points and an additional benefit as well. So if you can maximise your hand strength to beat the mutants, then you're going to get some real bonuses. Not only are there mutants, kind of level 1 and level 2 mutants on there as well, there are a number of boss mutants that you can choose to fight at various parts in the game, and these differ ever so slightly in the fact that you're going to fight these over 2 rounds, and there's a far greater chance of losing it against the boss mutants, because as you can see, the dice that they roll are far greater. So this one has 1 red, 2 green, 2 black dice, and you're going to fight them over 2 rounds, and that one is the Genghis Khaz. And look at the artwork. The artwork is absolutely stunning. I love, love, love the artwork in Posthuman Saga. It just feels very evocative of what you're trying to achieve. So you get these various bosses as well. How do you combat them? Well, progressively throughout the game, as you explore and you unearth things and you go on adventures and you read story elements, you're going to get access to various upgrade decks. So be there, some ranged weapons, or maybe there are some more melee weapons that you can have as well. There are backpack items, there are followers, and these are kind of acolytes, if you like, who will follow you around and give you certain benefits as well. But there is also the risk that if you lose, or if you sustain any damage against a mutant, you could actually end up with some mutant cards, and these are kind of negative abilities. They will start to restrict what you can do. Maybe they'll stop you carrying certain kinds of things, or maybe they'll reduce your morale or stop you recovering certain amounts of health. And again, depending on where you are in the game, there are level 1 mutant cards and level 2 mutant cards. So this entire game is trying to kill you all the time. And that's a genuinely great thing about Posthuman Saga, is I've not played 2 games that have worked out in exactly the same way, depending on the tactics that I take. So maybe I want to explore more, I want to try and beef up my character, then that's great. I can get some really good kind of weapons behind me and some good abilities behind me. Or maybe I want to try and rush through as much as possible and complete some of the missions on the sole objectives card, so I can start to boost up my various items I can get, and that's a good way to do it as well. And maybe I want to experience more stories, so I'm trying to get through it to experience more stories. You can play the game many different ways, and as a solo gamer, the amount of exploration that you get to do in this is fantastic. Sometimes you want the game to go on for longer because you're having such a great time, but all in all, for the amount of content that you get, in the base game of Posthuman Saga, there is a lot of playability and replayability for the solo gamer. Of course, I've pimped mine up ever so slightly. Mighty Boards were kind enough to provide me with a copy of the deluxe components, and that gives you acrylic markers, basically, so some plastic markers there. It gives you these acrylic kind of resource markers as well, and a few other elements. And if you really like a bit of bling in your game, then I highly recommend the Posthuman Saga deluxe components. However, the game doesn't just end with the base game. In the expansion then, the Posthuman Saga, The Resistance, you get a whole slew of new content. The first thing that you'll notice is you get 2 new characters with all the cards that come with that, and there are of course some extra equipment cards and follower cards, etc., to kind of bulk up your main part of the game. You also get a brand new solo board as well, which takes account of the fact that there are elements in the Resistance that aren't in the base game, so you can use this. So that kind of expands your experience. Really importantly, you start to get some level 3 mutants, and these are really good because now, as you play the Resistance version of the game, instead of completing 2 level 1 missions and a level 2 mission, you're going to do a level 1, level 2 and level 3 mission as well. So with that comes the level 3 mutants. Let me tell you, these guys ain't easy. And also, the most important thing is the addition of the slave train. You see, in Posthuman Saga The Resistance, the aim is, as well as completing your missions, is to kind of make contact with your Resistance lookout and find out where this slave train is. And this slave train is what the mutants are using to transport humans around the post-human world. And you get to follow that slave train back to the mutant stronghold, so you get this really strong narrative. I really like playing with the Resistance. I think it really adds a different element to the game, and I must admit, since I've added the Resistance into my game of Posthuman Saga, I haven't gone back to the base game. It's not that the base game isn't great, I just really like what the Resistance has added to it. But that's not where we're stopping with Posthuman Saga, because of course coming on the 2nd of February is the next expansion for Posthuman Saga, and that is Posthuman Saga The Journey Home. So coming to Kickstarter on the 2nd of February is the closing of the loop of the post-human journey. If you think about it, what's happened is you start off your adventures exploring the initial wastelands around, foraging, collecting resources, building up your camp, building up your character. Then with the introduction of the Resistance, you went out in search of the slave trains to find the mutant stronghold. Now, the expansion is all about the journey home, and therefore it's called The Journey Home. And on this journey home, you're going to work with the Resistance to find new tactical challenges as you'll find your way back to your camp. There are a number of new game mechanics employed throughout the game with various missions. There are new ways of scoring the game. There are 2 new characters to play with as well as a slew of cards. So here you can see on these kind of cards, if you complete missions in this certain order, then you will get certain benefits. If you get these mission cards here, then what happens is you can complete missions on a certain part of the map. So, for example, if I go to the tile indicated on here on my 5x5 grid and discard 2 medicines while performing a map action, I get to complete that particular mission. And there are loads of these cards. There are these cards that you will get points for if you complete your exploration tiles in a certain way on your map. And as you can see, they are all very different. There are a slew of new mechanisms. There are new ways of playing. It enhances the tactical experience. I'm really looking forward to playing with the finished version of The Journey Home, including that in my Posthuman Saga experience after it's launched on Kickstarter on the 2nd of February. And there we go. Thank you very much for joining me on this journey through all things Posthuman Saga by Mighty Boards. As I say, in anticipation of the Journey Home Kickstarter coming on the 2nd of February, I thought I would take you through everything you can see in the Posthuman Saga franchise so far, with a very sneak preview of some of the cards and some of the stuff that's happening in the Journey Home. I think it's going to be an exciting addition and really, as I say, close the loop on the Posthuman Saga tale. For me, as a solo game, I've really thoroughly enjoyed my experience with Posthuman Saga. I think it's a cracking exploration game. I think It allows you the ability to create your own narrative almost as you're taking these various paths. No two plays are exactly the same. If you think that exploration, combat, resource management is your thing, then by all means go and explore everything you can get on Posthuman Saga when the Kickstarter launches on the 2nd of February. Thank you very much to Mighty Boards for providing me with all the stuff you see behind me so I could preview the game and give you guys kind of an insight, a deeper insight into everything Posthuman Saga. So thank you very much for joining me on this journey. My name's Mark. This is Not Board Gaming. Please remember you can always like and subscribe to the channel, check out our other videos, and one final thought. If you can't find anybody to play with, there's nothing wrong with playing with yourselves. Until next time, bye-bye.